stand here 1,000 years ago, and you would not see ruins. You would see the center of the world. Before the jungle claimed it, before the stone gods went silent beneath centuries of root and vine, this was the greatest city on earth. Not Rome, not Constantinople, Angkor. A metropolis so vast it would not be matched in size for another 600 years. At its height, nearly 1 million people lived within its reach, moving through canals in causeways, beneath towers carved to represent the very mountains of the gods. And then, one day, they simply left. No invasion wiped it from the map. No single catastrophe brought it down. The greatest city in the medieval world was swallowed whole by the forest that surrounded it. And for centuries, the world forgot it had ever existed. This is the story of how that happened and what it reveals about the fragile line between civilization and wilderness. Angkor began not as a city, but an idea. In the 9th century, a Khmer king named Jayavarman II climbed a sacred mountain and declared himself a Devaraja, a god king, ruler over a new capital blessed by the heavens themselves. What followed was 300 years of relentless construction. Reservoirs larger than cities, canals stretching for miles, and temples, hundreds of them, each one a symbolic mountain built to mirror the home of the gods. Picture the skyline at dawn. Sandstone towers catching the first light, their surfaces alive with carvings of dancers, warriors, and celestial beings. Below, the streets are already full. Merchants haul baskets of rice along canal banks. Elephants move ceremonial goods toward the palace. The air smells of incense, river mud, and cooking fires. This was not a quiet ruin. This was a living, breathing capital, pulsing with ambition. What made Angkor possible was not just faith. It was water. The Khmer engineers built one of the most sophisticated hydraulic networks the ancient world had ever seen. Massive reservoirs called barays stored monsoon rainfall. A web of canals distributed it across the land, allowing farmers to grow not one rice harvest a year, but several. This surplus fed the population that built the temples. It fed the armies that expanded the empire. It fed the priests who maintained the rituals, binding the king to the divine. But this genius came with a hidden cost. The system required constant maintenance, endless labor, and a climate that cooperated. For 3 centuries it did. And Angkor grew larger than Paris, larger than London, larger than almost anywhere else on the planet. And then came Angkor Wat itself. Built in the early 12th century under King Suryavarman II, it was not simply a temple. It was a statement to the universe. 5 towers rising in the shape of a lotus bud, surrounded by a moat nearly 4 miles around, representing the cosmic ocean at the edge of existence. Every wall tells a story in stone. Armies marching to war, gods churning the sea of milk to create the elixir of immortality. Apsaras, celestial dancers, frozen mid-movement for 900 years. Imagine walking its causeway at sunrise, the towers silhouetted against a sky turning gold, the carvings seeming to shift and breathe in the shifting light. This was meant to last forever. In a way, it did, but the city around it would not be so fortunate. By the 13th century, the empire that built Angkor was beginning to strain under its own weight. Religious shifts pulled the population from Hindu devotion toward Theravada Buddhism, a faith with little use for god-kings and monumental temple building. The old ideology that justified endless construction was quietly dissolving. At the same time, the region's climate was turning against them. Tree ring evidence tells a brutal story. Decades-long droughts, interrupted by sudden, violent monsoons capable of overwhelming even Angkor's masterful canals. Picture the reservoirs cracking under flash floods, then baking dry the following year. The system built to guarantee abundance became a liability, too vast and too rigid to adapt. There was no single burning night, no final battle that ended Angkor. What happened was quieter and in some ways more unsettling. Farmers began drifting away from failing rice fields. Maintenance on distant canals lapsed. Nearby, the rising power of Ayutthaya pressed on Angkor's borders, forcing the Khmer court to shift its center of gravity toward the coast, closer to the trade routes that now mattered more than inland glory. Piece by piece, the reasons to stay disappeared, and piece by piece, the jungle began to answer. Vines crept up temple staircases. Roots found their way into stone joints centuries in the making. Within a few generations, what had housed nearly 1 million souls stood empty beneath a canopy of green. For nearly 400 years, Angkor existed only in local memory, tended quietly by Buddhist monks who never fully abandoned the temple itself, even as the city around it dissolved into wilderness. To the outside world, it became legend, a lost city whispered about by travelers but rarely seen. When French explorer Henri Mouhot documented it in the 1860s, he described towers rising through jungle canopy like something from a dream. More magnificent, he wrote, than anything left by Greece or Rome. He had not discovered a secret. He had simply been the one to write it down for an audience an ocean away. Today, the roots of centuries-old trees still grip the walls of Ta Prohm, holding stone and wood together in an embrace neither can escape. Angkor Wat itself remains the largest religious monument on the planet, drawing millions who walk the same causeway where kings once believed themselves gods. The city that vanished was never truly destroyed. It was reclaimed, absorbed back into the land that made its rise possible in the first place. And maybe that is the real lesson standing among these stones. Every civilization believes it is permanent. The jungle simply waits to prove otherwise. If this journey through a lost world moved you, consider subscribing for more stories like it. And tell us in the comments which vanished city should we bring back to life next.